All right, guys, another opinion video. So, yeah, I'm gonna do probably like 100,000 other people a prediction video for 2021 and beyond. And I have to admit, most of these ideas that I have are pretty far out there, pretty crazy, and unlikely to actually happen. But making predictions is fun, and there's, some food for thought in these ideas. So let's give it a shot. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to make a claim that Apple switching to M1 and consolidating, you have to remember they're consolidating not only their hardware, but their software as well. So all their OSs will be singular now, and that means eventually all the software will be for one specific OS. So I posted this tweet July 25, 2020. I think it was a little bit after WWDC. And basically, what I'm saying is that in a couple of years after their transition is complete, although they don't normally have a majority of the market share wherever they're participating, probably because of their high prices. But in this case, because their chips are clearly being shown as being so good, and of course they've been doing great software for such a long time, I think they're going to get somewhere around 50% of the PC market. So again, obviously quite a crazy prediction, but I think it's going to happen somewhere around 50%, maybe 3 to 4 years out. And unfortunately, because their chips are so good and their integration is so good, that this is going to be a extinction level event for a lot of companies. Specifically, I'm looking at Intel and probably AMD, meaning all of the x86 market might eventually die. If you think that this is impossible or ridiculous, I think it's more on the unlikely side than the likely side. However, remember that there were a lot of tech companies that people thought would go on forever, specifically Sun Microsystems. Also, when PowerPC was a hot thing, they thought due to the better performance, it was going to go on forever. And, eventually all of these things failed. So nothing goes on forever. And x86 is clearly showing its age. It has power usage problems. It has quite likely reached the pinnacle of its performance or gotten pretty close to that, at least in terms of performance per watt. So I don't think this particular prediction is one of my more crazier ones, but anyway, this is one of them. So the other one is that because of all of this work they're doing to consolidate hardware and software, and because of the market share that they're more than likely going to get, whether it's 50% or not, I think it's going to grow quite rapidly and quite significantly. I think that the demand for Swift developers is about to skyrocket. So not probably within the first 6 months or so, but certainly after the second half of 2021 and then beyond that. So if you're kind of still on the fence, should I learn Swift, should I not? I would definitely at least investigate it. All right, so this obviously isn't that crazy and is more than likely to happen, at least at a small scale. So why am I showing this article? AWS goes on Rust hiring spree. So what it looks like is Amazon Web Services and Amazon, the company, has decided that Rust is a good enough language that they're at some level going to bet the farm, at least on AWS. They're really integrating Rust into their platform. And as you know, AWS doesn't just run third-party cloud services for other companies. It also runs Amazon.com and all of their other properties. So this is a gigantic move. They're also going to, or they also have started to rapidly hire Rust engineers like crazy, basically. So if you look at this last sort of quote, we understand that we are net beneficiaries of the exceptional work that others have done to make Rust thrive. AWS didn't start Rust or make it the success that it is today, but we'd like to contribute to its future success. We are convinced that investing in the wider Rust ecosystem helps our customers and those who may never become our customers. That's okay. That's how open source is supposed to work. So what's my point? My point is that Amazon is going to buy Mozilla. And they're going to buy Mozilla because it would be nice for them to have a browser that they totally control. I think they might be already using Chrome, but something that only they have and is specific to them, I think is a pretty powerful feature for their, tablets and various other devices that they have. And also because if they buy Mozilla, they will be getting whatever Rust engineers are left over from the cull that happened recently, and also the Rust IP that they have. They have a Servo experimental web browser that they created entirely in Rust, and probably some other code that they also wrote in Rust. So these would be huge benefits to Amazon, and because of the present state of Mozilla's finances, they might be quite open to a takeover just to survive, because it seems that bad to them. So this might be an opportunity for Amazon to get a lot of technology and a lot of great engineers for cheap. All right, so the next one is probably the most, or maybe not the most, the second most nutsoid one. So here it is. My prediction from August 13. Microsoft using Android and doing strong integration with Windows is yet another sign that Microsoft and Google will one day merge. Oh my God, that's freaking insane. Once Apple goes ARM and no one can compete with them and the economy gets worse, the merger will be allowed. And this is the key point to this prediction and why I believe that there is a possibility for it to occur. So there is a great deal of overlap between Microsoft and Google. So let me show you my outline for this video. So number 4, we see Bing and Google Search. We see Office and Google Docs. We see Microsoft using Android on their devices. And recently they also announced that they intend to allow Android apps to run on their Windows subsystem for Linux. This is basically a virtualized version of Linux that's running inside of Windows 10. And they intend to allow Android apps to run on that. And of course, both companies are betting big on cloud. Azure is currently the second biggest in terms of revenue. I don't know where Google Cloud is, but they're, a distant non-second. So it would be beneficial, I think, for Google Cloud to merge with Azure. And then the other point, in terms of feasibility, where the regulators could allow it, is I think that for the reasons that I mentioned up here, with their new hardware and their consolidation, Apple is basically going to wreck the rest of the industry. If you've seen the reviews for M1, remember this is their first shot at desktop ARM-based CPUs, and they're destroying anything in the same class, including their own hardware based on Intel. So this issue is only going to get worse. Remember, Apple has something like $125 billion in cash. Their stock is doing very well. They have some of the best engineers on the planet, both for hardware and software. And they've been proving it this whole time, both with their iOS devices and now with their Mac devices. So I suspect that a lot of companies, not immediately, but eventually, due to this onslaught, are going to start going out of business. And at least that's what I expect these guys, their argument is going to be. And then I also suspect that the economy is going to continue to go to shit. So all this stuff about a recovery is coming, I think that's all nonsense, and things are going to get worse before they get better. So yeah, the crazier one of my predictions, but at least I do have some reasons for it. Now, the other one is related, which is that the entire industry will attempt to do what they always do, which is to copy what Apple does. So they're going to attempt to build their own in-house chip design, especially the guys that have some money. So, for example, Microsoft, probably Google. I mean, they have some current chip in-house chip design, but not to the level, I think, of sophistication as Apple. But they're going to join the ARM bandwagon. They're going to try to compete. Apple is going to continue to win, continue to make faster, more power-efficient chips, more well-integrated devices, a better user experience. They're going to continue to push their services into more and more different areas. They just recently announced a fitness based service for like $9.99 a month. So that's just going to continue to happen, and they're going to continue to steamroll the rest of the industry, and eventually the PC guys are just going to give up, and they're going to know that they can't compete. So they're just going to switch to RISC-V. And the reason for that is, and let me just show you some of the articles. It seems that the performance and even the power efficiency is quite good, arguably as good or better than ARM. But in addition to that, RISC-V is a new idea because it's completely open source chip design. So that means that instead of the companies going it alone and trying to fight Apple one-on-one, they can effectively gang up and use all of this open source IP that each of them create in order to fight Apple with their own devices. Now, already the performance and the power efficiency is showing to be highly competitive. I mean, this company claims that they're better, but whether they're better or not, it's clear that there's a big future for RISC-V and that it was well designed. There's a lot of really, how should I say, well-known, well-respected academics that are involved. And then there's these companies that are getting into designing chips for RISC-V that are looking pretty darn good. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that so they will try to fight with ARM chips. They'll fail. They'll switch over to RISC-V. And then in the long term, eventually Apple will also switch over to RISC-V because no good run lasts forever, right? And the reason for that is due to the costs of doing their own custom chip designs, right? Because they're literally going it alone. They're really not they're using the instruction set of ARM, but they're not using the designs of ARM. So it's really truly their own designs. And this, as the chips get more expensive, as the process node gets harder and harder to shrink, it's going to become more and more expensive to design these chips entirely on their own. And in addition to that, I suspect that one of the major reasons probably, that NVIDIA is wanting to license ARM, and even if they fail, probably somebody else is eventually going to license ARM. I'm sorry, not license, but buy ARM, is they believe they have some loophole or something in the license, the contract to both Apple and other companies, where eventually they're going to be able to milk substantially more licensing fees from them, right? Because the law, as strict as it may seem, it's always up to interpretation, right? So some clever lawyer can figure something out, and even the threat of a messy lawsuit that's very expensive and all that stuff could be enough to get, some of the licensees to cough up more money. So I think due to these reasons, in the far, far longer term, I'm not talking about in a couple of years, I'm talking about more like, 10, 15 years, eventually both Apple and, in fact, literally everybody will have to switch to RISC-V, because it just, the costs will be too high. And therefore, ARM will eventually collapse. So people are saying this part is probably nuts, but again, Compaq, Digital Equipment Corp, Sun Microsystems, IBM in the heyday was, absolutely enormous and a powerhouse. It's almost nothing right now in terms of influencing the industry. Obviously, nobody talks about IBM anymore. Nobody thought that Intel would be getting beaten half to death by AMD, right? Clearly they are now. So nothing is forever. And due to these reasons about RISC-V that I mentioned, eventually ARM is going to collapse. And the final one, maybe this isn't so crazy. Probably half of you think that it's likely, and half of you think that I'm out of my mind. But 2022, 2023, the economy, the global economy, will completely go to hell. And if you thought the price rises of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that stuff was crazy, today with like hitting a new all-time high and all that stuff, I think that it could be a lot more crazy. We have printed an enormous amount of money. It will probably be a lot worse before things get better. So, those are my predictions. Crazy, I know, but I do have some evidence. And at the very least, I hope that it's food for thought. And if this in particular happens, I hope that a lot of you guys can join the bandwagon and benefit in terms of jobs and your career and your income. So again, thanks for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff.